Hello dear students, welcome back. Today we have our final exam, B2 level, and this will be our last exam. We're going to study each question and look at the answers. Okay, let's start with the first one. We have a classic if-clause sentence. As you can see, our if-clause sentence is in the second one, and when you look at the Peter may buy a new car, we see a Model 1 use. So it means that this is an type 1 if-clause conditional, so our answer is going to be A. Let's have a look at the second one. Blah blah able to see well because of the fog. Oliver had a car accident. We have a reason and a result situation in this question. Oliver had an accident because he wasn't able to see well. Let's look at the answers. Not B is not correct because our tense here is past simple. I can't also use not been, not to. B, our answer is C. This house is set, blah blah, in the 19th century. In this one, we have a classic passive voice structure. The house didn't build itself, someone else did it. So we are going to choose the correct tense and the correct form of passive voice. We can understand from the time expression here, the 19th century, this happened in past simple. So I am going to choose the correct one according to the past simple. This house is said to be built in the 19th century. We have an omit situation in this one. Let's have a look at number 4. Robert blah blah have been at the gym this morning because he is at home with a broken leg. We have a result. Robert's leg is broken. So was he at the gym? We can conclude to a result. Let's have a look at the options we have. Needn't have been represents a situation that wasn't necessary. So it goes. Shouldn't have been. It represents something that we regret in the past that happened. So again, no. We most probably are looking for a deduction in this sentence. Mustn't have been is not a thing in Model 2. We only use the positive form of must in Model 2 to make deduction. So can't have been at the gym represents impossibility in the past. We are almost sure that he wasn't at the gym. Let's continue. This yogurt, blah blah, strange. I don't think we should eat it. We have a result here. We have a result here. So our conclusion is that we shouldn't eat it. So it must be smelling bad. We cannot use present progressive because this is a state verb. I don't have to use a present perfect progressive because it is happening right now. Also, again, it applies for our present perfect. So the only logical option is to use B. We regret, blah blah you, that there are no rooms available at our hotel for this weekend. This is a gerund infinitive question. The thing is, here we have an action that didn't happen, but we are informing someone and we are sorry to inform them. We don't regret an action that happened in the past. So I am going to use full infinitive form to inform. Jack made an effort to laugh at my jokes, blah blah, his boredom. You can see that here we don't have a sentence, a full sentence. We're using a noun. So I cannot use although. I cannot use whereas. The only thing here, the only conjunction here I can use with a noun form is despite. Robert didn't get the job as he had blah blah previous work experience. We have a result, he didn't get the job. So we are assuming that he didn't have much experience. This can be correct, hardly can be correct. It's not wrong. I cannot use little. It has to be used with a little. So it goes. He had not much. Maybe, but it's not as good as hardly. So I cannot use a few either. First of all, we don't have an e here, and we use a few with countable nouns. So the only option is A. I put my passport in my desk drawer, blah blah, not to lose it. So here I am going to talk about an aim, a purpose. In case no, even though represents opposites, so that can be okay. In order, if I wanted to use in order, I had to also add to. So it is going to be so that. I have been meaning to reply since blah blah your email, but I haven't got round to it. You can see the present perfect form here. I have been meaning, and I have since as my time expression. So I am going to use, the rule is past simple, so I have to use received. You will fail your exam, blah blah, you study harder. We have a condition here. We have an action that is conditional. So I need a negative if, which is unless in this case. Everything will, blah blah, by the organizing committee, so don't worry about the conference. The thing is, here we need to find something appropriate in this one. Everything will, blah blah, by the organizing committee. We have a passive voice sentence here, so I can't use A. B is also not correct. It can be this one. This would be also incorrect, so everything will be organized. This is the correct use of passive voice. If only the jacket I want to buy, blah blah, less expensive. In here, we're talking about wishes. For example, I could also rewrite this sentence using I wish. And the thing with wishes is that we use 1/10 past than the actual time we're talking about. So we have a singular noun here. This where would be definitely incorrect because our noun here is singular. So our choice would be had been is also incorrect in this case. B is the correct form. The firefighters believe that Alice blah blah when the fire started. We need a time harmony, tense harmony in this one. And this is a short action happened in the past. So we assume that we need a longer action happened in the past. So we are going to choose the past progressive tense. Anna offered to babysit my daughter, blah blah was very nice of her. We have this case which we are defining the whole sentence. This was a rule. The correct answer is which? Your newly painted house looks fantastic. Did you blah blah professionally? In this case, we're talking about causatives, making someone else do our job. So A is the incorrect one. Have to paint it is actually a modal. Have it painted and have painted it. The correct answer is did you have it painted professionally? No sooner blah blah the house than I realized that I had forgotten to take my keys. We're talking about something that happened very quickly right after each other. So no sooner blah blah the house than I realized that I had forgotten to take my keys. You can see the past perfect use here. So I am going to use past simple no sooner was I left the house than I realized that I had forgotten to take my keys. By 2030, a new airport, blah blah, in our city. We're talking about something that will be already done in the future by the time, this time expression. So our rule, our sentence structure with this tense was will have verb 3, but we're also talking about a passive voice one. So we are going to use will have been built. Lisa wanted to know blah blah in my free time. This is a reported speech sentence, and we are directing, we are delivering what someone else asked us. Lisa wanted to know what I did in my free time. I put in a lot of efforts, but I blah blah out how to make the machine work. So I tried a lot, I tried hard, but I couldn't have figured out or couldn't figure. What is the difference between couldn't have verb 3 and couldn't verb 1? Couldn't verb 1 is the verb 2 form of can, and couldn't have verb 3 represents an impossibility in the past. So we're going to go with A. Let's go on with complete the second sentence so that it has a similar meaning to the first sentence using the word given. Do not change the word given. You must use between 2 and 5 words, including the word given. I expected the dish to be spicier than it was. So I will say the dish wasn't as spicy as I had expected. I'm sorry I didn't help you with your project, said Gary to Mark. Jerry apologized not to help with my projects. Help Mark with his projects. Anne was dismissed from her post last week, but she doesn't seem disappointed. Anne doesn't seem disappointed. In spite of being fired last week. I regret not being patient with my students today. I wish I hadn't lost with my students today. We didn't postpone the event because the weather improved. We blah blah the event if the weather hadn't improved. We would put out the event if the weather hadn't improved. Now we have our reading parts. We have 4 employees talk about how they got their jobs. Now we have our reading part. We're going to talk about 4 employees to talk about how they got their jobs. First, let's have a look at our questions. We're going to decide which person did not have high expectations of getting hired, which person doubted the effectiveness of a CV, and the third question is, had the intention of showing employers the clearest picture of themselves they could, compared themselves to other candidates, applied an idea they weren't initially serious about, and the last question is, used a habit employers have to attract their attention. Now, let's go back to our paragraph. Let's start with Lily Ferguson. In all honesty, it was a move of desperation. I had been back from Australia for more than 9 months. And no matter how many CVs I sent out, I wasn't getting called in. And I'm sure it had nothing to do with how good it was. There are many people out there looking for a job. I realize now that I was limiting myself to all the traditional methods of looking for a job instead of thinking outside the box. Then, one evening, I was out with a close friend of mine and I was grumbling about my situation. When I jokingly told her I felt as if the only way someone would notice me would be if they saw me on a giant advertising hoarding. And she said, that's it. Next thing you know, I'm spending every last penny of my savings renting space on a hoarding in a really busy part of town. That same week, I got 60 job interviews, among which was the company I now work for. Let's read B. Greg Logan. I have read about all sorts of crazy things people do to stand out when being interviewed, but I'm not one of them. I'm not particularly creative, nor can I spontaneously crack jokes. But as I was waiting for the personal manager to call me in, I noticed a secretary was having difficulty with the photocopying machine. She looked really anxious and desperate, so I got up and offered to have a look. 10 minutes later, I had figured out the problem and was working on it when the personal manager opened his door and saw me on my knees. Hands and sleeves covered in ink. What an unfortunate first impression. Nevertheless, I was hired on the spot because apparently he appreciated my eagerness to help and readiness to solve a problem myself. We have Kira Byrne. I was at a point in my life where I felt like it was time for me to move on to a more creative company. There were people in my line of business that I looked up to and who were building very strong teams within their companies. How to catch their attention? I simply took advantage of a pleasure most of us have, Googling ourselves to see what will come up. I settled on 5 names of creative directors I admired and paid to have sponsored links appear as the first choice when these names were Googled. So, when they Googled themselves, the first thing they saw was a link that caught their attention with a simple message taking them to my website. Out of these 5 names, 4 contacted me, and I'm now working at the company that was my first choice all along. Tom Matthews, the last person we have. When I had to move from the north of the country to London, the question of a new job came up. I had to figure out a way to sell myself to many companies in a short amount of time. But how can you give a stranger a complete picture of your personality, skills and accomplishments on a 2-dimensional piece of paper? That's when I thought of using a CV/IV, Circle and Wide interactive video, just as with a normal CV. My video CV was divided into sections: work experience, skill set, contact information, and so on. Instead of writing it though, I was looking into camera and giving employers the opportunity to listen to my voice, get a feel of my style, and see my humorous side. Within 3 weeks, I was newly employed. Let's look at the questions again. Which person did not have high expectations of getting hired to get the job? Let's go back to Greg Logan. Greg Logan talks about how he helped the person that was struggling, and he wanted to help her. And when the personal manager saw that he was on his knees, hands and sleeves covered in ink, he immediately hired him. But what he thought was, what an unfortunate first impression. He thought that it was something bad for himself, but the personal manager thought that it was a good thing, that he was willing, he was eager to help others. So our answer for the first question is Greg Logan. Who doubted the effectiveness of a CV? Let's look at the last one. Tom Matthews says that, how can you give a stranger a complete picture of your personality, skills, and accomplishments on a two-dimensional paper? So he thinks that CV is not effective enough. So our second question's answer is Tom Matthews. Let's look at question number 3. Had the intention of showing employers the clearest picture of themselves as they could. Let's go back to let's summarize each person. In Lily Ferguson, we talked about how no matter how many CVs she sent, it didn't work, and she said that as a joke. Think about if only everyone could see me on a billboard or thing. And she eventually did that. It started as a joke, but she is working for the company that she wanted all along. In Greg Logan, we said that he helped the person that was in trouble and he got accepted for it. In Kira Byrne, she talked about the power of advertisement. The 5 person that she most looked up to, and she did something clever. She gave advertisements when someone of those 5 people searched for themselves on Google, they were going to find out about her. And about Tom Matthews, we said that CV, he didn't believe the power of a CV, so he wanted to give a whole picture of himself and he shooted a video. So we can say that the clearest picture of themselves as they could, we can say Tom Matthews, because he shoots a video about himself, he sends a CV, and it felt like he was on an interview. Let's talk about number 4, compared themselves to other candidates. When we are talking about candidates, we saw them somewhere here. Kira Byrne, we talked about, she said that there were many people in my line of business that I looked up to and who were building very strong teams within their companies. So, how to catch their attention? We will say that number 1's answer was, we talked about Greg Logan, which person doubted the effectiveness of a CV? We said that the answer is Tom Matthews. Had the intention of showing employers the clearest picture of themselves as they could. We also said by shooting his video, Tom Matthews compared themselves to other candidates. We said that it's Kira Byrne, applied an idea they weren't initially serious about. As we have said, this person was joking about advertising herself. as we have said, Lily Ferguson talked about advertising herself on billboards for the companies that she wanted to work for, and it started as a joke. But at last she was serious and she actually went for it, and she was really successful. So our answer for this question is Lily Ferguson. Use the habits employers have to attract their attention. So when we talked about Greg Logan, he said that he read about all sorts of crazy things, but he went for something that is classic and not out of the box. Okay, dear students, this was our last lesson in B2 and as well as our whole journey here, starting with A1. I hope you understood and benefited from these videos, because English is actually a really big part of our lives. It is very useful for each of you in your careers, in your daily life. If there's troubles that you had with during these topics, during these lessons, I advise you to go back and study them again. We did our best to help you during this journey, and I want to thank you to Sağlık-Sen as London Bridge family. This was the last step of our journey. Thank you so much. Take care of yourselves.